Hi, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Digital Futures. I'm Danielle Dy Buncio, co-founder and CEO of Vdc, and I have with me today Anita Nelson, who I've known for years. You're going to love this discussion. Anita is the Chief Strategy Officer at Skanska USA Building. Anita, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Anita, as we kick off our conversation today, I would love if you could share with me a little bit about your career journey. How did you get to where you are today? And tell me a little bit more about the evolution of your current role.
You know, so as Chief Strategy Officer for Skanska USA Building, the main part of my job, and this is probably the part that I love, is really about thinking about where we want to go. What do we want to be when we grow up? It encompasses long-term business planning, working with our executives to make sure that our priorities are achievable, actionable, and really all of that does involve our strategy, marketing, business development, and emerging technology functions. So that whole group is part of my organization, which is really a lot of fun. You get kind of a bunch of different groups together talking about a lot of great ideas, super creative, super business-minded. It's really kind of a great juxtaposition of things that I get excited about. But for me, it all started, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was pre-med in college. I graduated with 2 majors in English and communication. I loved the built environment. I really cared a whole lot about cities. I thought about going to urban planning, and a friend of my father's who is in urban planning said to me, like, don't go get a master's degree, calm down, go work at a developer or a builder or an architect, go learn something about the real estate world. And he was right. And I got a job doing marketing because it was, you know, what I was qualified to do for a construction company in Washington, D.C. And what happened there was I was writing proposals, right? So responding to RFPs, which was fine. It wasn't the most exciting thing for me. But I kept saying to someone, I don't understand what I'm writing about, right? Like any other time I've written, I knew what I was writing about.
Right.
So I asked to go in the field. I said, I want to go do something in the field. And they're sort of looking at me like, you don't really have the qualifications. And I said, I'm really good at learning new things. You know, I had many majors, I was biology, I was this, I was that, I can do this. And so I got an opportunity to move to Las Vegas to be effectively what they called a construction analyst. So I helped manage our contract. I did everything on a very large job, city center in Las Vegas for 5 years, $9 billion project, 10,000 people on site at peak, $200 million work put in place a month. Crazy big job.
Right.
And my job was just manage our construction management contract at first. And then I took on more and more and more and more and more. And an executive one day, I was running a cost model. An executive from our client asked my boss's boss, who's the chick running the cost model? He goes, oh, this is Anita. She's one of our analysts. She's at UNLV getting her MBA. And I was like, I'm not at UNLV. We talked about it. I haven't done it yet. And he's like, well, go enroll and like, go do this. So I did get my MBA at night while we were working on this project. So really learned more about construction on the job and really about business from the MBA, but also we were working with a global public company. So how the public company reported on their investment and tracking construction, all that was really fascinating to me. And then while all this was happening, the world kind of came out from under us, which means something now more than it did then. But 2008 happened. And so I had the opportunity when that job finished at the end of 2009 to go to New York or go to the Middle East and help set up operations there. And of course, I was like, okay, I'll do that. Again, kind of the pattern of me saying yes and not quite knowing what I was getting into continues to develop. And so I helped open up operations for the Abu Dhabi division of the company. The company was bought at that time. So in addition to starting up operations, a little M&A action filled my days. And that was when the individual that sent me to business school called me and said, what do you think about a role in strategy? And I was like, I don't know what strategy is. I mean, I've studied it, but like, what does that mean here? And he's like, we're going to take this company from, you know, a couple $1 billion a year to $10 billion a year in 5 years. And I want you to help, you know, build the plan for that. And I was like, okay. So I moved back to the States and really helped develop, you know, a big construction division, whether it was buildings, civil, power. And I didn't know at the beginning of any of these assignments what they were going to be, but I just kind of followed my curiosity and trusted smart people that I thought were going to do interesting things. But I continue to love the work, like the tangible nature of what's built. The people in construction are, I think someone on the panel you and I were on last year said, people in construction, we eat problems for breakfast.
Right.
And I think that's probably why I'm still in the industry. But when I was doing all of that, I really started to understand, you have strategies, you have business plans, but how to really implement them, how to get people to really buy in, not just at the top levels, right? You can do a business case for just about anything, and someone just looking at the bottom line could say, okay, that's great. But how do you get people to do something? And in this industry, it's all about people. This is a people industry more than it is anything else. And so a lot of what I started to really care about was really creating buy-in, building consensus. And then how do we sell this stuff, right? Like, if we're going to make this big change, or we're going to invest in this thing, how do we get clients to buy in? Or are we investing in the things that clients want? And so starting to put together all of these pieces, the big thing for me was they've got to all be connected. And there's a huge technology opportunity in construction right now. And around when I was getting to the point at my former firm, which is AECOM, I was really thinking, how do we pull this tech part into it? How do we get people to adopt? It's so hard in construction. We talk a lot about construction being like second to last behind hunting in adoption of technology. And this
Absolutely,
is pre-COVID. different mindset now for sure. But that was when this opportunity at Skanska came out. And the Skanska team was basically saying, we want to really become a more strategic thinking organization, a more data-driven organization. But this can't just be a philosopher in chief. We want somebody who's going to implement, who's going to bring people together and actually get things done. And I remember reading the job description and saying, oh, this I can do. Like, this is what I love. And then I met the leadership team, and I, looked at a lot of the projects they do, and really it jived. And so I joined, I'm almost 2 years in, and it's really incredible. Great team, great opportunity. And then the role is really, it started out as one thing. It's evolved into similar to what we expected, but, we've hit the ground running on a lot of things. But during COVID, obviously, quite a bit came up in our wheelhouse. So we got to really play with some things that we didn't think technology-wise we'd be doing for years. So some really exciting stuff. I hope that's a good summary.
Oh my God,
that's a long way of saying I've been to a lot of places, only to come back to New York.
That was awesome. And I think that in hearing your story, it's really a story about embracing opportunities, and being able to seize those opportunities to make a better future, which is really great. And I love what you said about the integration of strategy and innovation and marketing, right? And all these different groups starting to come together. So I think that's a good segue. As a strategist, as an innovator in this built environment, you're really helping shape our world's future. And you've shared with me a personal mission that you have to build for a better society. And I'd love to hear what that really means for you.
So building for a better society is Skanska's, overarching vision. But I've really taken it on. It's one of the first things that I've always really knew about the company. I've joked before I joined Skanska, when people have called and said, hey, there might be an opportunity. I'm like, is it with Skanska? I was an admitted Skanska groupie from afar. And I said this because it seemed that they were able to tie, growth and profitability and innovation with what actually matters, right? The spaces that we construct, if I look at New York City right now, whether it's their airports, train stations, hospitals, when I think about the most meaningful places in New York City for people in the past 12 months, we've touched so many of them. It is one thing to look at a skyline and see the signature of your work or the work of people you've partnered with over the years. It is another thing to know that someone's major health issue is being resolved in a facility that you indirectly or directly helped construct and deliver, whether it was as an architect or as an urban planner, as a builder, as a tradesperson. Even as, I know a lot of people are, accountants, or they're in my space that, they marketed the pursuit, but whatever you do, you're touching that thing. And that matters to your community. When I grew up in Long Branch, New Jersey, my father was a big player in the redevelopment of the waterfront. So when I was in high school, you couldn't run on the boardwalk. It wasn't safe. It wasn't a good environment. And now, I go in the summer, I'm like, there's too many people here. I'll come back in the winter, right? And it shows what this work can do. It can turn a community around. It can really actually also bring people together. When you think about those projects that are huge in the media, that people really care about, when you really get stakeholders involved, oftentimes we see those as challenges, right? We just want to get things done. But when you see partnership with a community, when you see partnership with a client, when you're able to bring in MWBEs or startup firms or try new technology out, it's really quite wonderful. One of the things I love about a lot of big jobs is you get so many diverse backgrounds of people, right? You have people 1 year out of school and you have people 40 years out of school. And just watching those people learn and teach each other in that kind of reverse mentoring kind of way, and then be there when the school opens or the hospital opens and they're bonding over what they're, bringing to the world, it's just quite something. Like there's not, to me, there's not a better industry. There's not a better place. A lot of people talk about how construction is old school, and it may be in many ways, but I do think it's going to be one of the few things that no matter how digital we get, how impersonal we get, it still is personal, because it's the spaces we in whether we live in them, whether we go to the hospital in them, whether we learn in them, whether we work in them, travel through them. Like there's so much that's real there. And so for that to be the best it can possibly be, and for it to work for everyone is what building for a better society means. And so to me, that's, I was all about it before I joined Skanska, and I've kind of doubled down since, because what I've seen, what some of the work we've done has really brought to life, particularly during a crazy time. Like some of the things we were doing on live hospital projects where, we'd give standing ovations to people when they were leaving and coming and going, every day. And these are people who are building things that have plenty of things to do, and they're stopping for the doctors and nurses and administrators that are coming in and out of those facilities. And you saw it, really in your face during the pandemic, but it continues to be what inspires me to do this work, to do it here.
I think you put that really well, right? Everything that humanity touches, where we work, where we live, how we have fun, right? So much of that is dependent on the built environment. I like how you put it in terms of those meaningful places, right? It's not just about the building itself or the infrastructure itself, but what's happening there. And I liked what you said about how it matters to the community, right? And being able to bring people together, turning those communities around, creating something together. So given that future that you painted such a great picture of, tell me about some of the investments from an innovation and from a technology side especially that you're making at Skanska to shape that future.
Sure. So a couple of things. The first is last year, we launched our Ec3 tool, which is an embodied carbon tool. And this is really a calculator. It's a free tool. So it allows benchmarking and assessment and reductions for embodied carbon. It's focused on those upfront supply chain emissions of construction materials. So clients can use it, builders can use it. And this is something that we partnered with outside firms and universities to deliver, and now it's something that, it benefits us, right? Like we're the company that built it, but it's really for the industry. It's really for the world. And so that's something that we definitely spent significant investment in. The other thing, and this is more of an ongoing effort, is around our data strategy. And I keep joking that what we need to get people to understand what we mean by that is, I don't know if you're familiar with the Schoolhouse Rock from like the 80s where they had the omnibus bill. I say that about data points, right? Give me a data point. Give me like, I'm just a field and show how it goes from, like if you think about an RFI, where that goes and where the information in that RFI goes and what that could mean if it's tracked, and if the system is tracked and can talk to other systems, and if it can be consolidated with other data points, right? We've launched a tool called Skanska Metrics, which gives clients ideas of the different benchmarking tools around estimates and schedules and things like that. But what really is the benefit is when this information can start to get to be predictive. so that when whether you can predict activity, whether you can predict a financial challenge, whether you can model different risks and see how it'll impact productivity or things like that. And a lot of this came up in the past year because clients are saying, okay, if the pandemic shuts down our job, what does that mean? Right? So you need to have that information. And that's a really straightforward way of thinking about your data strategy. One of the folks on our data strategy team was just talking about having real-time information about when materials are going to arrive on site and what that could mean, right? And I joke around that could end up, getting that person promoted. And people said, why? I'm like, well, if you can tell what time things are showing up and when everything's happening and you have real-time data, right? You have increased certainty. Your schedule and your cost certainty goes up. Your client's happier because when you say, hey, this is happening on this date, it happens on this date because the data you have is correct. There's still room for human error, but it's much more robust information that we're drawing from. And so the client can be happy, you can be happy, the company's happy, company's bottom line improves, client's project comes to market on time, and everyone's telling, this guy, hey, you've done a great job. Congratulations. Like now you're a project manager, so there's so much opportunity to it, but it's so complicated, right? Like you've got to have strong data infrastructure. Your systems need to be committed, right? You've got to have a core of systems that you're working in. Because if you keep changing your apps and your systems and doing new things, you're going to have, it's like, we run things on Microsoft Excel, and Anita's version of Excel is going to be different than Danielle's version. So when I send you my contact list, my state might be before your zip code, right? And so think that complication, and I know this sounds silly, but like those little bits of things confuse things and take longer. So a lot of our investment is in getting the infrastructure right, building the base set of systems and the base set of data and getting data entry correct. Fields correct. And all of this takes time, it takes resources. So we're in sort of what I'll call like the not sexy side of our data strategy. But where this gets us to is, what we'll call an elevated version of our metrics program, which is when we get to be predictive, when we get to be able to say to a client, not only can I tell you what this could mean, but I've also been able to tap into a value engineering database of information of different ways to say adjusting your facade so that we can get you to the number you have in mind without compromising the design intent. So there's all of these different things we can do with data, but in order to do them, we have to get everything right on the back end. And that takes time and it takes effort. And so a lot of our investment is on that. But I'm really excited about where that can go because people keep talking about digital strategy and things like that. And I'm like, I just want my fields to be correct. And then we can go do many, 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 many things. But we're in the, I call it like the dark times, right? Like this is messier, it's harder. But when we've been starting to show really compelling dashboards and get into some levels of prediction, and people are super excited about that. That's helping me build consensus. That's helping get people excited about the opportunities.
So I think that this data strategy realm is super exciting, for Skanska specifically, but for the industry as a whole. And I think what you're really talking about is being able to take action from your data, right? The story that you told about the field guy and them being able to get promoted, that's because they're able to take action from this. And a big idea that we have here at Vdc is this idea of going from data to insights to action, but we've got to get that data piece right. So you're absolutely right in investing in the infrastructure and those initial tools and creating the standards and getting things connected. And that's sort of the technology and the process piece. The other piece is people, which you hinted at a little bit. So I'd like you to talk to me a little bit about adoption, because that's where like the rubber hits the road. How do you build a culture of innovation that embraces this adoption, looks forward to change, is willing to try out new technologies and processes? I think a big part of it is being okay to fail, right? So how do you build a culture of innovation where they're not afraid to fail, but actually learn from it? Both within Skanska, but maybe within that like broader ecosystem as well, because your success isn't just dependent on, those people that report to you, but also those external stakeholders. So what are your thoughts on adoption?
I have so many thoughts on this. And you say something really important. There's external factors too. Everyone is impacted by this. I mean, if you think about it, how you ask subcontractors or how architects set up initial models. That impacts everyone on a project, everyone at a company as you're trying to move something like that forward. But going back to your initial question, we've talked a lot about in recent years, whether it's a company or an industry, of being an innovative company. What does that look like? What does it look like to be one of the top innovative companies? And when you look at the most innovative companies you can think of, they're not innovative companies. They're companies of innovators. It's truly like you think of Google, of Microsoft, of your company, right? These are Skanska. I mean, you think about it and you're like, wait a minute, these are people solving problems and innovating every day. When we think about, the pandemic, the best lessons learned, the best things that scaled came from like good old fashioned ingenuity on a job site. Again, like in construction, people eat problems for breakfast. So it's really, that ingenuity has to be something that is celebrated and scaled all the time. Whether it's old-fashioned stuff like remote hand-washing stations or using a 6-foot stick to ensure social distancing, to the comprehensive data strategy or really advanced 4, 5, 6D modeling, right? It could go, it runs the gamut. And so I think you said something really smart. We have to give people room to fail, but we also have to show them the tools to scale. So one of the things that we're a large decentralized organization. So we have all of these different offices, all of these different projects. When something works on one project, how do we get it to go from one project to another project? How do we learn from it and adopt it? And it's really tough because, we're so caught up in our deliverable, in what our client wants, that it's really hard to say, okay, let me take a minute and see how I can help Skanska scale this up, right? And those are the tools we have to help as an organization give people. And so to sort of perpetuate that company of innovator mindset, the best thing that I've seen, the most successful way to do things is to build communities of people who care about certain technologies or certain fields. Whether like right now we have a data analytics community. We've always had a Vdc Knowledge Network. So you're connecting people that are like-minded and doing similar things every day, and they're sharing and talking about all the different things they have. Our business development team, we have a business development leadership council. We have a BD Power Hour every month where sometimes we're sharing best practices, sometimes we're sharing problems. And we're saying, hey, I've got 30 BDs and a bunch of people from account management and a number of executives on the phone and a lot of creative people. And here's this pursuit and here's this challenge that this client has. What do you guys think? Right? And everyone will start to almost brainstorm around that significant challenge. On the flip side, when we've overcome one of those challenges on a job site, say, or with a pursuit, we bring that back to that same group. And that community taps into that. And our data analytics and bringing that data strategy to life is 100% reliant on that community. Because that community is going to be those people, and we all know who they are. They're the people that are playing with new things on the job site or saying, what if we did it this way? And they're not always, they're not always the senior most person. They're not always the tech person. Sometimes they're the newest college grad that's just better at things, right? Like there's people on my team, I pride myself as great with PowerPoint. There's people on my team who can crush me, right? No matter how much experience I have, they're better and faster, and that's great. So I'm here for that. And so it's bringing those communities of best practices together. So it's less like, do I have an encyclopedia of every problem Skanska's ever solved? No, don't have that. But what I do have is a community of people who are solving those problems every day and talking to each other about it. And so when we want to roll something out, that community serves as our first, line of change champions. Or, as our business unit president, Paul Hewins, like to say, he's like, we have an army of champions. It's going to get around this. For example, we're crowdsourcing our business plan. So we have a 3-year business plan. We have over 150 people touching it because it doesn't mean anything to me if I write a great plan and nobody's going to implement it, right? It's my job to do that. But I was like, wait a minute, we have some really smart people. So not only do I get to tap into a diverse, smart group of people, but I'm also building the first layer of implementation so that when, we have some big presentation and we're talking about it and someone's like, I don't understand this. There's probably someone almost in every office, not on every job site, but in a lot of job sites, it's like, oh, I participated in that. This is what that is. right? So it's like your translators, your communicators, your integrators are all ingrained in the business. And starting to treat that part of your organization, really the people doing the work every day, as ownership of your business strategy, ownership of innovation, ownership of what's going to be your future, gives them confidence in the business, gives your clients confidence in them, because they're coming at you with, hey, client, here's what I'm doing for you, but this is what Skanska is going to be doing in 5 years. So it overall just kind of helps us put our best foot forward with clients, put our best foot forward with our employees, and empower people to really start to influence innovative thinking. And it's tough. It's not, I wouldn't say we've, I can't tick this box off just yet, but it's starting to, what I would say, like light a bit of a creative fire that's super exciting. And we did it with diversity and inclusion too, right? So we, as a leadership team, we can't solve every issue we have, right? I need to know where those issues are. I need to know how people are feeling. So really, it doesn't matter what the challenge is. You've got to tap into the community of people that care about fixing it. And you will get more than if you pull a group of executives and a couple of technical specialists into a room to solve a problem.
Absolutely. That's, it's so smart. That type of collaboration means you're moving forward together, right? And I think that's really powerful. Anita, you've shared so many great ideas with us today. As we wrap up, I'd love to just ask if there's anything else you'd like to share to leave with our listeners as we think about, how we all react to, but also influence and really shape our future.
I think, that's a great question. And this is a great conversation. I would like to do the flip with you, obviously. But one of the things I've learned, and I learned this during my career, but then I saw it firsthand really in the past 12 months now that we've been dealing with, a perpetual industry crisis, is if you have a good idea, speak up. Someone is going to listen, and don't stop speaking up. Whether it's related to building an inclusive culture, or whether it's as simple as, we had a young person watching an office try to figure out how to track people's COVID systems when they came in. And this is before everybody started using the QR codes. And he was like, what if we use a QR code and use a form and just have a tracking system, because then we'll have this all here. And it was just a person that was into data analytics and into technology. And he was sitting in the office just watching people kind of try to play with the idea, and he spoke up. And in some cases he was like, I have no business speaking up. But once he did, we gave him the tools, and he worked with a team, and he, implemented something that was super, super effective, and it worked for our offices, and it, helped save us time. And now we have data, and it's great. But if he didn't speak up, we wouldn't have gotten to that. Personally, I was seeing some things that I don't know if everyone I was working with was seeing, because we're all exposed to different things on the internet. And when things were happening last summer, I was like, is anyone seeing this? Is anyone talking about this? And someone was like, no, we're glad you spoke up. And sometimes I think we're all resistant. You're afraid to fail in that way. You're afraid to speak up and have somebody say, that's a crazy idea. And I think if we've learned anything in the past 12 months, it's that there's no crazy ideas. And if you're ever in a place where people don't want to listen, like I said this recently, like find another room then, right? Like there's always a place for creativity. There's always a place for new ideas. And that's kind of my mantra lately is speak up, raise your hand, because especially now, nobody really cares where the good idea is coming from, especially if it's going to help keep people safe or help move a company forward from a technology perspective, or really help build a more inclusive culture. All of those things are so important in our industry and in the world right now that, doesn't matter where the idea comes from.
Speak up. I love that. And I think that's how good ideas start to get out there, start to grow. I might have one piece of the good idea. You might have the other piece. If neither of us spoke up, it just died, right? Yeah. So I love that. I think that's a great way to leave our audience today. Thank you so much, Anita. It was really fun to talk to you, as always. So thanks for being on this edition of Digital Futures.
Thanks for having me.